A little while ago, I made a video discussing some of the games that I was looking forward to coming in 2024, and while that is still the case, there is a bunch of games coming. They are mostly like little remasters here and there, or games from third party developers. There is nothing major coming out this year from first-party devs. We all know games like Monster Hunter's coming out in 2025, games like the new Grand Theft Auto's 2025, PlayStation have even went on record saying that they don't have any major first-party titles coming this year. So it kind of does make you question what is going on with the rest of the year. Is this mostly going to be a year that we're playing a bunch of our backlog games? I mean, I would be okay with that, but you can't help but wonder what is actually going to be happening from Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft. I'd like to talk about the three of the companies and actually give my opinions on where I think they are in the gaming world right now. I would also like to give a couple of opinions for changes to games going forward, and I would like to hear what people would think about them. When it comes to Microsoft, I kind of made a video like glossing over the subjects a little while ago, but you know, I'm kind of done defending Microsoft when it comes to their game making these days. They have so many IPs under their belt and they've never bothered making games for them. The number one thing that I think they're concerned with is Game Pass first and foremost, and we've heard about this over the past couple of months, them possibly going to leave the console marketplace, and I can see it, like what we discussed, and that's fine. But it kind of sucks that they do have a lot of IPs under their belt and have never really done anything with them. We're still waiting on news regarding Fable, we're still waiting on news regarding Perfect Dark, and I honestly don't think that Microsoft right now are in the business of trying to make truly innovative games. Sure, I think they want to make some games here and there, but I honestly use it as a prime example here of Halo Infinite that came out a wee while ago. Halo is like their number one IP once upon a time, and can you honestly believe that they never even made any DLC for Halo Infinite? I don't think it's blasphemy, like saying it would have been cool to have DLC for like their number one franchise. I just don't think they care, like at all. They made like a half-baked game that was good in some areas, but they didn't really care about adding anything to it. And I think that kind of like shows where Microsoft is as a whole. It's just Game Pass number one, and that's fine. When it comes to Nintendo, it kind of does feel like we are in a bit of a transitional phase waiting on the next Nintendo machine, and that's fine. I guess we kind of can cut them some slack there, but I do feel like they're taking far too long to release this next machine. We've already heard rumours that they delayed it until 2025, which really sucks, because it feels like they're just feeding us like little remaster games here and there for the past year. You've got games like Mario and the Thousand Year Door coming out, which is fine, but it is a glorified remaster of a game that already once came out. And it's the same with Luigi's Mansion 2, another remaster of a 3DS game that some people probably won't buy because they maybe still play it on the 3DS. This is a fact. The games have just been nowhere near as interesting over these past couple of years as they were the first few years of the Switch, where they were really innovative. These past couple of years to me have kind of felt like they've been full of filler, sequels for the sake of being sequels as well, and I use games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 here as an example. Good game. Is it a worthy Xenoblade Chronicles game though? I personally don't think so, and I think they could have done a lot better, and I think a lot of people share the same opinion as me, and I could also say that about Tears of the Kingdom feeling like a glorified DLC for Breath of the Wild. I don't think half as many people will remember Tears of the Kingdom as much as Breath of the Wild, only if they'd never played Breath of the Wild before it. And I genuinely also cannot believe it took them 6 years to make Tears of the Kingdom as well. I think there's a wee bit something in there that's not quite right. I think they should have saved some of these games for the Switch 2. Honestly, the Switch 2 cannot come quick enough. For Sony, it's genuinely hard to believe that the PlayStation 5 has been out for like 4 years. Where has the time gone? But there's barely any games within that time. Seriously, the other week I was just replaying Demon's Souls on the PS5 and I couldn't believe how great that game was. I was like, man, why is there no more of this on the PS5? A game that looks amazing and also feels amazing. And that's because Bluepoint have not made anything since then. So their developers are stuck making games for like 5 years plus, and that's like over half the console's life cycle gone within that period of time. This kind of leads into the fact that there is a lack of games coming out for 2024, and it's all because the developers are too busy spending years upon years making these games, like 5 years a pop, maybe 6 years, Zelda Breath of the Wild took 6 years. We've not heard anything from Blue Point about their next game yet because it's just taken far too long to make. And I genuinely think that something needs to be done about it. Otherwise, we're going to have more years like this where there's just an absolute lack of games. And maybe like a lack of experimentation in a lot of the games as well. Because these games are taking far too much time to make and costing far too much money to make. I mean, Spider-Man 2, as far as the leaked document went, $350 million that game cost. And could you honestly say that that game feels like a $350 million game? Seriously, no. It genuinely just feels like another Spider-Man sequel game. It doesn't feel like anything innovative to me, at least. I'd like to know what people feel about that. But the fact that it cost them that much to make and that long to make it absolutely mind boggles me. And this isn't a knock on Spider-Man per se. It's a knock on how games are getting treated as a whole right now, where it kind of feels like the companies feel like they need to make the best looking games possible for people because all they're interested in is graphics, really high-tech motion capture, all this stuff that's costing so much money for games takes 6 years to even play a sequel to a game these days. And I always use this as a example. Back in the day, Onimusha, one of my favourite series, all came out within a few years of each other, all on the same system. All 4 games of Onimusha, I got to play a whole series on one system. It was genuinely fantastic. Games like Grand Theft Auto, we got Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, San Andreas, all on one machine. It was like one of the best periods of time for gaming because it was full of experimentation, and I really feel like that needs to come back into AAA gaming now. But it's held back by the fact that the companies are spending like $350 million to make a Spider-Man sequel. So it results in less experimentation in their games because they need to play it so safe. If you remember when Spider-Man 2 came out, everybody was talking about the game being so safe, and that's because they were probably scared to do anything experimental that wouldn't make it sell so they could get their money back. Now, I'm not saying I want the companies to stop their huge AAA releases. I absolutely don't want them to do that. I still want them to make their huge AAA releases and release them every few years, 5 years, 6 years, however long it takes to make them. But I also want them to make sequels in between their games that maybe are not as high advanced as the AAA titles. Maybe like a AA or something like that. I would like them to even go back to, now this is maybe extreme, but I don't know, what do you think about this? I would even like them to go back to, say, Capcom, for instance. We're sitting here right now waiting on the next Resident Evil. Who knows when it's coming out? Maybe next year, maybe the year after, but after that, what's going to happen? We'll probably wait another few years for the next Resident Evil. But it would be great if in between maybe we had like an old school style Resident Evil with like PS1 graphics that maybe only took Capcom a year to make. This is like little things that would fill the void of waiting on these huge AAA games. And I genuinely think that modern audiences would try these old school type games as well because they are interested and they are new fans of these titles, so they would be drawn towards supporting them, and they would understand that these are not the main AAA releases, these are little AA releases released for people in the meantime that tell little side stories or even a main story that lead into the next games. I genuinely think that the companies will do this at some point. It's just taken them a little while to catch on. Another way to look at it is like this. I don't know if this will come off a bit weird, but like Switch style graphics on a PS5 AAA release, you know. It's no quite a AAA release, but like another Horizon game comes out, but it's no like truly like mind-blowing graphics. It's like Switch level graphics or something, but it's like a little side game in between. Is that like truly like so against the rules to do something while waiting on the next Horizon game? It makes absolute sense to me, because like one of the best things about the Switch as well, and I might complain about frame rates and resolution with the Switch a little bit, sure, but one thing I love is that the games are absolutely tailored around the hardware, thus creating art styles that we've not really seen since like the PS2, GameCube and original Xbox era, which were some of the best eras that have ever existed. Because as the generations have went on, it kind of feels like all they've cared about is graphics, 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 but along the way they lose art style in the process. Now I think by doing stuff like this, it would also bring back that art style. And I also do think it is one of the reasons the Switch has been so successful, because it feels a wee bit more old school in that regard. More room for experimentation, like what we were talking about, rather than safe, high budget games that don't really move the genres forward at all. Ubisoft actually tried this a little while ago, if you remember the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake that was announced in 2021. Well, everybody actually shot it down by letting Ubisoft know that the graphics were nowhere near good enough or up to the standards of a next-gen game. But what they were really trying here, I think, was probably a AA game along the lines of what we're talking about. And I think the proof is there because they actually done a Metroidvania-style Prince of Persia a little while ago, because more people will accept worse graphics from a 2D-style game, but not a 3D-style game, right? So, I think Ubisoft tried this once before and they got shot down, but I think people need to be more open to this. I think you need to be more open to little AA games in between the major games, and I think that's what will push gaming going forward. We will only be sitting here waiting for 6 years for a sequel, 5 years for a sequel, whatever it may be. I just think it's the right way to go, and I think like the developers are thinking about it, because Ubisoft have been pushing it, and they usually do lead the charge with stuff like this, because they kind of want to do stuff cheaper, and you can't blame them. But I think other companies will follow suit, like Capcom, all the rest of them, because we honestly can't sit here waiting on games for 6 years, guys. It's absolutely crazy, thus resulting in years like this where we're just buying remasters, essentially, if you know what I mean. I'd like to know what everybody actually thinks about what we've discussed here today, because it's been on my mind a little while. I've been talking about it with people in my streams and stuff, and a lot of people share the same opinions. I'd like to know what you guys think. And as always, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.